March 1st, 1910. Deep in Washington's Cascade Mountains, a winter storm was preparing to make history. High above the railway, thousands of tons of unstable snow silently gathered on the mountainside. Below, stranded trains waited helplessly in the darkness, surrounded by snow and silence. Passengers believed they were simply waiting for better weather. The real danger remained hidden. Inside the train, life continued as normally as possible. Children watched the storm, unaware of the danger building above the mountains. Outside, railroad crews fought tirelessly to keep the railway alive. Every effort to clear the tracks was swallowed by another wave of snow. Day after day, Wellington disappeared beneath an ocean of snow. The greatest threat wasn't the storm itself. It was the mountain, silently waiting above. Above Wellington, the mountain was changing. Every hour added more weight to an already unstable slope. Layer upon layer, the snowpack grew heavier. The mountain was storing enormous pressure. Inside the train, most passengers had fallen asleep, believing the worst of the storm would soon pass. Railway officials knew conditions were worsening, but predicting an avalanche was nearly impossible. The stranded trains looked insignificant beneath the towering mountains around them. The storm showed no signs of ending. In fact, it was becoming even more dangerous. With every passing hour, the railway disappeared deeper beneath the snow. Hidden in the darkness, the mountain was reaching its breaking point. Most of the passengers never heard the warning signs. They were asleep when the mountain finally moved. Just after 1 o'clock in the morning, the mountain could hold no more. Then, without warning, the mountainside finally gave way. Thousands of tons of snow began racing toward the valley below. The avalanche grew larger with every second. Within moments, it was heading directly toward the stranded trains. Below, the passengers had no idea what was rushing toward them. Most were asleep when the mountain began its descent. There was no warning, no time to escape. And then the avalanche hit. Entire rail cars were ripped from the tracks and hurled into the darkness below. In a matter of seconds, calm turned into chaos. The mountain had arrived. When the avalanche finally stopped moving, the mountain left behind a completely different world. The railway that connected the mountains had been shattered beyond recognition. Those who survived the impact awoke in darkness, surrounded by wreckage, snow, and uncertainty. What happened?
Is everyone all right?
The cold is coming in. For many survivors, the first moments felt like a nightmare they couldn't wake from.
Careful with that timber.
Are you all right?
Almost immediately, survivors began helping one another. In the darkness, cooperation became survival. Some rail cars vanished almost completely beneath the avalanche. Those who could walk began searching for others trapped in the wreckage. The avalanche had carved a path of destruction across the mountainside. Within minutes, survivors and railway workers began the difficult task of searching for the missing. As dawn arrived, Wellington finally revealed the full cost of the night. With daylight came the first real chance to search for survivors. Daylight revealed what darkness had hidden. The destruction was far worse than anyone imagined. Every minute mattered. Beneath the snow, survivors might still be alive.
Then someone heard something, a sound that changed everything.
Against overwhelming odds, some survivors were still fighting to live. Every life saved felt like a miracle against the mountain's unimaginable force. But not every discovery brought hope. Across the debris field, small personal items told stories no one would ever fully know. Only now could rescuers see the true size of what the mountain had unleashed. As rescue efforts continued, survivors faced a long journey ahead. But they were alive, and that mattered most. By morning, news of the disaster was spreading across America. Telegraph lines carried the story far beyond the mountains.
A tragedy in a remote mountain pass suddenly became a national story.
Across the country, Americans followed each new report with growing concern. The avalanche itself covered an area larger than many people could imagine. Investigators soon arrived to understand how such a catastrophe had happened.
Rail displacement is significant.
The clues were hidden inside the mountain itself. Weeks of relentless snowfall had quietly prepared the conditions for disaster.
Piece by piece, investigators began reconstructing the events of that night.
But understanding what happened was only part of the story. The real question was whether it could have been prevented. Long before the avalanche struck, the warning signs were already surrounding Wellington. Railroad officials knew the snow was becoming a serious threat.
Above the tracks, millions of tons of snow waited on steep mountain slopes.
Crews fought constantly to keep the railroad open, but the mountain always seemed one step ahead.
Looking at the landscape today, the question feels unavoidable. Was this disaster waiting to happen?
The railroad faced an impossible decision: move the trains or wait for safer conditions.
But the schedule is tight.
Waiting seemed safer than moving, but the mountain had already made its decision.
Modern avalanche science suggests the snowpack had become dangerously unstable.
More than a century later, experts still study the disaster to understand exactly why it happened.
Perhaps the most haunting lesson of Wellington is this: nature does not negotiate, it only waits. More than a century later, the victims of Wellington are still remembered. Photographs and records preserve the story of that terrible night. The lessons learned from Wellington helped shape future railway safety.
The mountains remain silent, unchanged, watching as they always have.
In the end, Wellington became more than a disaster. It became a lesson written into American history. The avalanche is gone. The trains are gone. But the mountains remain. Nature slowly covers its scars. History remembers what the snow cannot.
They were passengers, workers, families, ordinary people caught in an extraordinary tragedy.
And yet, from every disaster comes knowledge. From every loss, a lesson.
This is DarkWaypoint, exploring the disasters, mysteries, and survival stories that shaped our world. Subscribe and join us on the next journey into the unknown.